The story continues with the girl pushing Hwan Choming to destroy the division and the union. And if he does that, she'd do anything for him. She explains that ever since the division's formation, it has ever expanding. But the union's opposition hindered it, thus balance was established. There were guys who had held on despite not being affiliated. And one of them was the Daedok District, Chongbik High School. This revelation shocks Hwan, hearing there were schools that didn't get consumed by them but held on, when Yongil High School was consumed so quickly. The girl explains that it was because that guy was there, the giraffe of Chongbik Mountain, Taek-sun Kim. He was the reason they had held on, and his mission was to capture Chongbik High School using the division's power. Taek-sun Kim is a third-year student at Chongbik High School. He has an innate fighting sense that is supported by super strength. This man had embodied the word general. After he bodied the guys who attacked his school, the rest of the guys from Taejun Union Chongbik Front Detachment also came there. The guy prompts how they were just baits and they were waiting for him to be alone. If they get rid of him, Chongbik High would be nothing without him. But Taek-sun smirks, revealing that he was not the one to get trapped. Just then, all the guys from Chongbik High School come out of the bushes and surround them. This was all a ploy to lure the detachment captain, Dong Hyuk Bae. Out of all his skills, true leadership was his most prominent role. And because of these three skills, he came to be known as the Giraffe of Chongbik Mountain. On the other hand, Hwan Chomin was having a nightmare, where he'd been caught by the division pretending to be the leader. He jolted back to reality and was relieved that it was just a dream. He blamed the girl who had threatened to reveal his identity to the Emperor's division for his distress. Capturing Chongbik High School was completely different from cleaning up his own high school. Earlier, she had mentioned how the Chongbik High had defeated the Taejun Union's detachment. Hwan suggests should launch an all-out attack on them as they had several advantages. But the girl warned him not to make haste, as the leader they knew was always through. They could suspect him of being a fake if he loses the battle. After school, Hwan decided to look around the Chongbik neighborhood. While he was wondering how he'd defeat Chongbik High School when even the leader had a hard time doing it, two guys stopped him. They took him to a remote place and asked him what a kid from another school doing there. They suspect he was sent by division or union. Just then, Taek-sun Kim also arrives there and asks what is going on. Just by his presence alone, Hwan felt overwhelmed. The guys told him that he was from the union and that they were just going to beat him up. But Taek-sun says he'd do it himself. Hwan knew he'd be dead if that punch hit him. As he was about to hit him, Hwan revealed that the Emperor's division had infiltrated their school. Taek-sun stops and asks him what he meant. Hwan revealed the exact location of the guy who had infiltrated their school. Although they didn't believe him, but they went to look for the guy anyway. A few minutes later, they came with the guy who had infiltrated their school. Turns out, he had ordered one of the guys to snuck into the bathroom so that he could reveal his location and win their trust. He told him that he was there to help them. A few minutes later, they couldn't believe that Hwan managed to predict the division's plan. They were skeptical of him, but Taek-sun Kim still wanted to let him in. They deduced that because his school was devoured by the division, he wanted to get his revenge on them. The fact that the division planted spies in their school means they were planning to attack them soon. That's why they needed all the help they could get, even if it was from an untrustworthy person. While the captain of the detachment front was blabbering about his fate, Taejun Union's number 10, Taeyung Jong, comes there. He asked one of the guys to get him a joint, but the guy was slow in figuring out what he meant, resulting in him snapping out at the guy. Jong wanted to get recognition from the Union by claiming the Chongbik High. They didn't understand why Taek-sun Kim was only defending when he was strong enough to take over other schools. They were curious to find out. A few days later, the silver-haired girl meets with Hwan again by getting into his house without his permission. She inquires about his plan to get inside the Chongbik High and gain their trust, and what he was going to do with that. She was forcing him to do something even the Emperor couldn't do and warned him to hurry before the Union made any move. The next day at Chongbik High, Hwan was determined to find Taek-sun Kim's weakness, as he suspected there was one. One of Taek-sun Kim's main guys tells him how he didn't trust him, and also informs him that Taek-sun Kim wasn't at school today. The guy ordered him to leave. As he was leaving, He heard one of the guys getting frustrated because they were always on the defensive when they were powerful enough to strike first. He also mentions that Taek-sun was just using them to babysit his little brother. Hearing this, all of them silent him, pointing Hwan might hear it. But he was already gone. We see Taek-sun Kim at his dad's grave, assuring him that he was going to take care of his little brother and would do everything in his power to stop him from turning out like himself. He was determined to create such a clean environment for him. We see Taek-sun Kim's brother, Taeyong Kim, and the one with him is none other than Hwan himself. When he heard Taek-sun had a younger brother, he went around all of the middle schools to look for him. He pretended to be someone who was sent by Taek-sun and took Taeyong with him. Taeyong assumed that they were throwing a surprise party for his birthday and went along. Taeyong asks Hwan what they are planning, but Hwan prompts that it is secret, making it look like he is planning a birthday party, even though he had no clue that it was his birthday just a moment ago. Hwan sees how innocent he is and feels guilty for using him as a hostage to take over the school, but he also has his reasons. He messaged the division to be ready in 30 minutes. Seeing how naive he is, Hwan advised him not to trust strangers so easily. But he was carefree because he was certain his big brother would save him no matter what. They go back and forth saying things like what his big brother was going to do if there were dozens of men, to which Taeyong replies that there were dozens of members on his side too. Their argument grew louder and louder, but they eventually calmed down. Taeyong says how Taek-sun had promised to save him no matter what, ever since their father died. When he entered junior high school, there were a lot of guys who used to bully him. They once took him to the changing room and bullied him relentlessly. The bullies knew few people in the union and were acting out of control because of that. As the guy was about to hit him, Taek-sun barged through the door, fuming with anger. He brutally beat them up for messing up with him. And ever since that day, more and more people began to follow him. He became captain around the area and made those two groups disappear from the Cheonbyeok mountain. And that was the reason Taeyang was so sure that he'd protect him. At that moment, Hwan remembered how his brother treated him and felt a sense of jealousy. They leave the store. We see that the division was lurking in the shadows, waiting to jump him. Taeyong asked Hwan where they were going. Hwan told him to wait there until he came back. As he was leaving, he was trying to justify what he was doing. If he didn't do it, he'd be dead for sure. Taeyong asks for his name, but Hwan replies he isn't worth remembering. Taeyong prompts that the reason he followed him was not just because he knew his big brother, it was also because he seemed like a good person and thanked him for giving him a wonderful time. At the school gym, one of his people informed Taek-sun that someone was looking for his younger brother. As the division jumped to catch Taeyong, they found out that he wasn't there. It was because Hwan changed his mind and ran away with him. He realized that Taek-sun didn't mean to be a bully. He just did that to protect his only family. He apologizes to the girl Mahari for giving up on the test. They had something he wished to have his whole life, a brotherhood. He'd rather die than have it shattered. But he was stopped by none other than Jung Taejung from the Taejun Union. Turns out, he was looking for Taek-sun's younger brother as well and went to his middle school. Taek-sun rushed to the school while calling his brother, but he wasn't picking up. He orders his lackeys to search for him in every corner. Just then, he got a message from Taeyang's number. When he opened it, he was baffled to see his brother kidnapped. They advised him to come to the given location alone. On a different location, Jung prompts how he knew something was off with his big brother. Otherwise, why wouldn't he use his strength to devour other schools? And he finally found out that he was just trying to save his little brother. Taeyong warns him about his brother, which makes Jung furious and he kicks him in the face. He informed him that he had already planned for his funeral. They had asked Taek-sun to come to a different location where the captain of the detachment was waiting for him. Jung informed the little brother how the members of the special units were there. There was no chance he could beat them. And even if he did, he still had the little brother as a hostage. The other asks him what they should do with Hwan. Jung prompts that he must be close to Taek-sun if he is hanging out with his little brother. So they decide to lock him in with him too. After they leave the container, we see that Hwan has already freed himself from the ropes. For a second, he thought he got caught. When he goes to check up on the little brother, he sees him crying. He was blaming himself for putting his brother in this predicament, and that it'd be better if he just disappeared. He doesn't want to be a burden to his brother all the time. Hwan assured him that everything was going to be okay. Outside the container, they were surrounding it like a pack of dogs. Jung told them that he was going to eat and warned them not to let them escape. Otherwise, they'd die. It'd be impossible to escape from there. But fortunately, they only took away Hwan's first phone. His secret phone was still with him. Because he blamed himself for shattering their brotherhood, he decided to help Taeksun using the division's power. Just then, he remembered the big-eyed guy from earlier and made a plan to save Taeksun and his little brother. On the other hand, Taeksun was taking a beating from the detachment group. He wasn't even fighting back. He asked the guy if his brother was safe and sound with an angry look, which made the captain furious. But Taeksun was still not backing down and threatened to unalive him if something happened to his brother. The captain was terrified and ordered his lackeys to trample him. At the other location, the thugs from the Union were shocked to see what was in front of them. Their rival gang, the Division, was there as well. Originally, Hwan had planned to give up on the school and only save the little brother. But then he came up with a better plan, to protect the brother and take over Chongbuk High School at the same time. As the Division and Union were fighting, Hwan signals Taeyong to be ready. On the other hand, the thugs had brutally beaten up Taeksun, who was now lying on the ground. They'd never imagined beating him up like this, only because of his loser brother. When Taeksun asked him to let his brother go now, the captain revealed that he was just venting his anger till now. Jun's condition to release his brother was a separate matter altogether. The Division was overpowering the Union. They were there for the younger brother as well. The Union couldn't afford to lose either and fought back with everything they'd got. While all of them were busy fighting, Hwan suggested it was the best time to escape without anyone noticing them. As they were just about to get out of the container, someone broke the door and entered. The guy was from the Division. He was confused to see two people there and asked them which one of them was Taeyong. Hwan didn't expect him to find them that easily. He didn't account for it. If they get caught by the Division, the situation will be the same. Just then, one of the guys from Union also entered and confronted the guy. But he got beaten by him in just one punch. When he turned around, he only saw Taeyong. As he was about to take him, Hwan attacked him with a rod from behind. While the guy was down, Hwan ordered Taeyong to run. Hwan was holding him down, buying enough time for him to escape. He freed himself from Hwan's hold and was furious at him. While running, Taeyong remembered what Hwan told him to do. The plan was to let Taeksun know that his younger brother was safe. He was strong enough to handle the rest. Hwan had heard earlier that they were meeting with Taeksun at the abandoned building and advised Taeyong to go there. He assured him that he was not a burden. But this time, he was going to save his big brother instead. At the abandoned building location, the captain reveals that Jung wanted to trade his legs for his younger brother. He wouldn't be able to fight again, and in return, he'd have his brother back. Taeksun immediately agreed to it, shocking the others. But he demanded to see his brother first. They tried to contact them, but no one was picking up the call. Just then, they hear someone screaming, "Big brother." They all turn around to find out that it was Taeyong. He screamed that he was all right. The captain was speechless and ordered his lackeys to go catch him. But unfortunately for them, there was no restraint from Taeksun now. He grabbed the two of them and slammed them to the ground, immediately knocking them down. They realized that they had messed up badly. On the other hand, Hwan was getting his ass kicked by the Division guy. Up until now, he didn't know because he always controlled them. But now he'd realized just how strong his brother's underlings were. And that guy was reigning over these beasts. The guy didn't want to waste his time on him and was about to go after Taeyong. Hwan had heard that the members of the Special Operation Forces were all gathered there, which meant only a small number of people went after Kim Taeksun. If the Division got the news that Taeyong wasn't there, they would go after him instead. He couldn't afford that as he wanted to get rid of the Special Operation Forces using the Division. So he mocks the guy for running away from him. He had already calculated this and found a sure way to win this fight. At the other location, Taeksun was kicking their asses one by one. Taeyong remembered the next step of the plan, which was to inform the Chongbuk High School about this and bring backup. Taeyong immediately runs to bring the backup. All the while Taeksun was beating the hell out of them like a demon. The Captain Guy was frustrated and terrified. He wondered why his brother was walking around freely and ordered his guy to figure it out. Just then, the guy told him to look behind, and we see Taeksun standing in front of him with his bloodthirsty eyes. Meanwhile, Hwan was still bluffing to drag as much time as possible, so that no one would notice Taeyang's absence, and they kept destroying each other. But first of all, he had to survive against the monster in front of him. He ran for the rod crossbar again, but this time the guy intervened. He kicked him and mocked him for relying on weapons. Hwan's plan worked, and now the guy was completely focused on him. Taeyang finally found his brother's underlings and informed them about the situation they were in. Hwan was constantly getting beaten up. The guy didn't understand why he was bluffing when he didn't have the strength to back that, which reminded Hwan of the time his brother got annoyed at him for being so weak. Hwan was fuming and started to push back. The guy mocked him for his bravado, but soon realized what he was aiming for. After getting his ass impaled by a screw, the guy chased after him to teach him a lesson. But before he could get to him, Hwan knocked over the tilted shelf and made it fall onto the guy. The guy couldn't avoid it in time and got subdued instantly. At the abandoned building, we see that the silver-haired girl was also watching from above when someone else entered the area. Everyone stopped fighting when they heard his voice. It was none other than the 2nd Battalion leader of Emperor's division, Kwak Jigong. He asked Taeksun what he was doing. The Captain Guy was stunned to see the man himself and wondered what he was doing there. Taeksun asked him what he was doing there and if it was division's turn to fight. But Kwak Jigong says that he was there to make him an offer. Taeksun knew he'd say something like that, seeing as how he was having a hard time. But he informed him that it was a little too late for that. He said that he didn't need his help since the situation was already resolved. We see his underlings are at the scene now. Kwak Jigong told him that he'd regret that and left. The Captain Guy makes a run for it. Taeksun didn't chase him as he already set an example for him. Taeksun finally takes it easy for a moment seeing his gang there. As they were leaving, one of his guys attacked him with a hammer from behind. But Taeksun saw him in the shadow and kicked away the guy before he could land a hit. He asked them what was the meaning of this. Just then, Jung answered him that it was his doing. The guy had his brother with him as well. Earlier, when Taeyang went to inform the guy, Jung was there as well. Taeyang apologized to him because he didn't know they'd betray him. Taeksun asks them when did it start. His body was on the brink of giving up. One of the guys replies that ever since they realized that he was using them for his brother's safety. They wanted to live their life with pride and flex their power, making a name for themselves in the city. Taeksun didn't get angry and just accepted it. He was trying to prevent the laws of the jungle from coming to where Taeyang was, but it turned out like this anyway. Jung recalls how he'd been working behind the scenes all this time, provoking the kids under him. That also explains the outburst in the school. He had also prepared if things went south inside the container. He locked Hwan with Taeyang to create a mess. He was sure that he'd do something. He planned to handle all the mess with his wits as soon as the situation with the Special Operations Forces became a mess. He was desperate for the advisor's recognition and planned it all to make him notice him. Taeksun told them to take him on before making a name for themselves, but he was at his limit. Taeyang freed himself from the guy's grip and stood in front of his brother, telling them that he was not a bad person and that he wasn't going to let them pass. He remembers what Hwan had told him to save his big brother this time. Jung was annoyed and ordered them to show the power of Chongbeek. As they were about to attack, Kwak Jigong came back. He kicked the first guy, surprising everyone. He found it interesting because things were turning the same as the leader had told him. Kwak Jigong burst their bubble by informing them whom they refer to when they say the power of Chongbeek. It was not all of those. It's a word that refers to only one person, Kim Taeksun. He mocked them for trying to act tough when they were nothing without Taeksun. The guys get mad and attack him. Kwak Jigong dodges one of the attacks and hits him back. But he lets the other guy hit so they can brag they'd hit Kwak Jigong from the division. He asked them to send the next person, but no one dared to move. Taeksun wondered if he was trying to make him indebted to him so that he could join the division. But he was determined to join even if that was the case. Jung ordered them all to attack him all at once. Kwak Jigong suggests Taeksun to run when he gets the chance, surprising him. He told him that the leader didn't want him to suffer. Earlier, what he was doing was his offer. The leader wasn't the kind of guy who'll get someone into the division making them feel indebted to him. He screamed at him to scram and charged at them. Taeksun was left speechless. They left the scene as Jigong had asked them to. He apologized to his little brother for all this, blaming himself for not being a good leader. He had no idea they'd betray him. Taeyong asked him if he was going to join the division. Seeing the position he was in, it'd be the best decision to join the division. But he says that the division helped him for their interest and that they were a disgrace to the city. He wanted to be an honorable brother to his younger brother. Just then, Taeyong remembered the guy who helped him escape, a person who didn't betray him. But before he could say more, Hwan appeared in front of them himself, holding one of the division jackets. Taeksun was shocked to see him involved in this too and asked him who he was. Hwan replied that he needed to join the division. At the abandoned building, Kwok Jigong was beating them up like flies. One by one, he took down all of them. He was disappointed in them as these guys had been a pain in his neck for a long time. Just then, he realized that their leader was gone. Jung was making a run for his life. He was not foolish enough to face the leader of the division's 2nd Battalion. He was such a madman that Hwan Muge gave him the position of the 2nd Battalion at the age of 18. He didn't understand what a man of his caliber was doing there. He called him a fool for trying to get Taeksun on his side, because he knew that person would never serve under anyone. He had to do something about it or he'd be in trouble with the advisor himself. Just then, he sees Taeyong and Hwan standing in the way. He thinks there was still a chance and all he needed to do was to capture him again. Hwan came in front to save him, but before Jung could reach him, he was punched down by none other than Taeksun. Jung was confused and looked up to find Taeksun glaring at him with a menacing look. And not only that, he was wearing the division's jacket too, which made him wonder how they managed to convince a monster like him to join.